Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea confirms 36 more cases of the coronavirus, almost all of them in the city of Daegu, where a woman's believed to have infected dozens of people at her church. The International Monetary Fund warns that the coronavirus outbreak in China is going to result in lower GDP growth globally as it disrupts supply chains worldwide. Morgan Stanley says China's growth will come in well below 6%. And South Korean President Moon Jae-in holds a luncheon with the director of the Oscar-winning film Parasite, along with the movie's cast and crew, congratulating them and pledging full support for the Korean film industry. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The number of coronavirus cases here in South Korea is now at 87. Today, the country confirmed 36 new cases. For more on this, our Ji-young is on the line with us. So, Ji-young, where are we seeing all these new cases?
Devin, 35 out of the 36 newly confirmed cases were from Daegu and the neighboring Gyeongsangbuk-do province in the southeast of the country. 28 cases in Daegu and 7 in Gyeongsangbuk-do province to be exact. Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced on Thursday that most of these patients are linked to the Shincheonji Church of Jesus, which was visited by the country's 31st confirmed patient. 2 of the other confirmed cases in Gyeongsangbuk-do province are 2 men in their 50s who, according to health officials, caught the virus at Cheongdo Daenam Hospital. The 31st confirmed patient has been found to have visited that hospital. Health authorities are still trying to figure out how the other 5 people caught the virus. Now the number of cases in Daegu and Gyeongsangbuk-do province alone has reached 53, which is over 60% of the total confirmed cases in the country. Currently, more than 1,600 people are being tested for the virus, and majority of them are from these 2 regions. With most new cases confirmed in Daegu and Gyeongsangbuk-do province, Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced Thursday that community-based transmission has started, and that it is in its early stage. So starting from today, people who have not been abroad recently but show symptoms of the coronavirus can also get tested. If they are diagnosed with any type of unidentified pneumonia, they'll also be isolated in one-person hospital rooms.
Now, Ji-young, there was also a case confirmed in Seoul. What do we know about this patient?
This patient was diagnosed with the coronavirus in a clinic in Jongno-gu district in downtown Seoul. The clinic is just a few hundred meters from a kindergarten for the government complex in Seoul. And a person from this kindergarten had been in the clinic on the same day as the patient. Health authorities advise people to avoid visiting hospitals unless necessary. Those that have a cold but no fever should stay home to avoid cross-infection from visiting hospitals. As the spread of the virus for now is mostly in Daegu and Gyeongsangbuk-do province, the government has decided to keep the crisis alert at the current orange level, which is the 3rd highest on the 4-tiered system. Orange means the disease is spreading in limited areas, and the highest level, red, means that the infection is taking place across society in general. However, the government pledged to go all out to curb further spread of the virus. That's all for now, but I'll bring more updates in our later newscast. Back to you, Devin.
All right, Ji-young reporting there. Thank you. Now, Chinese health authorities have said the number of daily confirmed cases in Hubei province dropped to under 1,000, but this is mainly due to changes in its diagnostic standards. Meanwhile, the Middle East has reported its first coronavirus deaths. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The reported death toll from the coronavirus in mainland China has reached 2,100 as of Wednesday, while the number of confirmed cases has surpassed 74,000. Citing the country's health authorities, China's state-run CCTV reported Thursday the death toll in Hubei province, the center of the outbreak, increased by 108 from the previous day, while the number of confirmed cases increased by 349. It's the first time the daily increase in confirmed patients in Hubei has been under 1,000. The report attributed this to the changes in the country's clinical diagnostic standards, in which only those who tested positive for the coronavirus are tallied as confirmed patients. Previously, China included patients with pneumonia as confirmed cases, even if they tested negative for the coronavirus. Meanwhile, according to local media outlets in Singapore, the country's health authorities said 2 more patients have contracted the coronavirus, raising the total of confirmed patients to 84 as of Wednesday. And the Middle East region has witnessed its first coronavirus deaths. Iran's health ministry said 2 Iranian nationals had died while receiving treatment in the country after testing positive for the virus. The number of coronavirus deaths outside of mainland China now stands at 10 people, following those deaths in Iran and the deaths of 2 passengers from Japan's Diamond Princess cruise ship. According to NHK, the deceased were both Japanese nationals, a male and a female, both in their 80s. 79 more people on board the ship were confirmed to have contracted the virus on Wednesday, raising the number of confirmed patients in Japan to more than 700. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And making a big U-turn, China has admitted for the first time that COVID-19 can indeed spread through the air. Kim Hyo-sun has the details.
Chinese health authorities have admitted that aerosol infection could be one possible transmission route of the new coronavirus. China's National Health and Family Planning Commission unveiled new guidelines for diagnosing and treating patients on Wednesday, adding the virus can spread through air. It went on to say that the virus can be passed on through aerosol transmission if a person is exposed to high concentrations of droplets in the air in a relatively closed environment for a long time. China's leading respiratory expert Zhong Nanshan, who rose to fame after combating the 2003 SARS epidemic, also said the virus can be spread through communal sewage systems.
Overseas experts and I agree that people do not get infected by eating food with the virus, but by breathing in aerosol from contaminated feces, which still has virus in dry condition. So hospitals should also pay attention to this problem.
He said a smooth sewage flow in drainage systems is critical to reducing the number of infections. Last week, around 100 residents were evacuated from an apartment block in Hong Kong over fears the coronavirus may have been transmitted via the building's piping system. This came after 2 residents living on different floors but on the same vertical block of the apartment became infected with COVID-19. This immediately drew comparisons to the 2003 SARS outbreak, when there were over 300 infections and 42 deaths at an apartment complex in Hong Kong, as defective plumbing allowed SARS to spread through the building. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
North Korea is reportedly imposing a 30-day quarantine on people who've traveled to other countries. Still, for now, North Korea has not reported a single case of the coronavirus. Oh Jung-hee reports.
Closing the border, suspending tours, and a strict quarantine of 30 days. These are the steps North Korea is taking to fight off a coronavirus outbreak. Speaking to Reuters on Wednesday, North Korea's ambassador to UN organizations in Geneva, Han Dae-sung, said the regime is putting its nationals and foreign travelers who visited other countries into a 30-day quarantine. That's double the virus's 14-day incubation period. He explained that scientific studies show the virus can break out even 3 weeks later, and preventing the virus is much cheaper than trying to cure it. He added the North has seen no confirmed cases yet. According to the World Health Organization, North Korea has reported it checked nearly 7,300 people entering the country for a 6-week period through February 9th. 141 travelers with fevers were tested, but all turned out to be negative. The WHO also says it's not dealing with any coronavirus cases in North Korea. But it's offering the North the necessary testing supplies and protective equipment like goggles, gloves, masks, and gowns. Meanwhile, North Korean and WHO officials were due to meet in Geneva on Wednesday, but results of the meeting are not yet known. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
With the 2020 Tokyo Summer Olympics only about 5 months away and the coronavirus outbreak showing no sign of ending, there are concerns that the Games might have to be called off. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The Tokyo Marathon, scheduled for March 1st, will be held on a much smaller scale than originally planned this year in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Roughly 38,000 amateur runners will not be allowed to participate. Instead, it'll be limited to only 200 elite runners and wheelchair participants. However, the bigger concern is the 2020 Tokyo Summer Games that's scheduled to start on July 24th. As the COVID-19 outbreak is not yet under control, there are concerns over whether the event could even take place. The WHO says it hasn't made a decision on the matter.
We have not offered advice to the IOC for the Olympics one way or the other, and neither would we. It is not the role of WHO to call off or not call off any event. It is the role of WHO to offer technical advice.
According to the Tokyo 2020 Organizing Committee chairman, the committee isn't even considering canceling or delaying the event and will press on with the Olympics regardless. Citing a Japanese virologist, the New York Post reported on Wednesday that if the Olympics were to happen tomorrow, they would have to be canceled. The Tokyo Organizing Committee and the IOC have reiterated that they're going to continue following the advice of the WHO. It raises the possibility that if the outbreak spreads further, the Tokyo 2020 Olympics could be postponed or completely called off. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In other news, the Pentagon says when the defense chiefs of South Korea and the U.S. meet next Monday in Washington, the two sides will discuss defense cost sharing. The Pentagon's chief spokesperson, Jonathan Hoffman, explained Wednesday that sustaining South Korea-U.S. relations is crucial to boosting the allies' capacity to defend the Korean peninsula. He added that South Korea is one of Washington's oldest allies and that American forces, first deployed to the country in the 1950s, will stay. President Moon Jae-in had lunch today with the director, the cast, and the crew of the Oscar-winning movie Parasite to congratulate them on winning 4 Oscars. Saying that their accomplishments wrote a new chapter in the country's 100-year-old cinema history, Moon vowed full support for the local movie industry. Here's the president.
한마디로 영화 산업의 융성을 위해서 영화 아카데미에 대한 지원을 대폭 늘린다거나 하여튼 확실히 지원하겠습니다. 그러나 간섭은 절대 없을 것입니다.
President Moon added that it was thanks to director Bong Joon-ho's outstanding talent that the movie was able to overcome the language barrier. Moon also thanked the cast and crew for giving pride and courage to the South Korean people amid the coronavirus outbreak. He pointed to the deepening social divide portrayed in the black comedy, saying that reducing social inequality is the government's top priority. One of the dishes served at today's luncheon was japaguri, a mixture of black bean instant noodles and a soup-based ramen, a dish featured in the movie and translated in the subtitles as ramdon. The coronavirus outbreak could harm not only the Chinese economy, but the global economy as well. And the IMF has called on the global community to work together to contain the virus. Morgan Stanley also warns that China's economic growth could plunge. Our Kim Jae-hee has more.
The International Monetary Fund has warned that China's coronavirus outbreak poses risks to the global economy's fragile recovery this year. In its G20 surveillance note released on Wednesday, the IMF said the fall in global growth appears to be bottoming out, but the projected recovery is fragile. It said the expected increase in global economic growth to 3.3% this year from 2.9% in 2019 is a fragile one, as growth in advanced economies is lagging. It also said the coronavirus adds to the uncertainty, as China has stopped production and is limiting access to virus-hit regions. This will hit the tourism industry, product prices, and supply channels of other countries, negatively impacting the global economy. On the same note, Morgan Stanley also warned of uncertainties surrounding the virus outbreak. In its report released on Wednesday, Morgan Stanley predicted 3 scenarios. In the worst-case scenario, where the spread of the virus is not contained fast enough for manufacturing production in China to resume to normal levels, Morgan Stanley analysts forecast that China's GDP growth will drop to as low as 3.5% in the first quarter this year. In this case, China's full-year GDP growth for 2020 will come in at just 5.6%. Morgan Stanley analysts said China's manufacturing production had only reached 30 to 50% of normal levels as of last week. They forecast that the situation will gradually normalize to reach 60 to 80% of the usual levels by the end of this month and will be back to normal by mid to late March. But they warned of uncertainties surrounding the outbreak and said that they are closely monitoring the dangers of the situation worsening to extended disruption in Chinese manufacturing. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
Now, before international organizations started making official announcements about the coronavirus outbreak, the Canadian startup company Blue Dot used AI to track news stories about it and raise the alarm back in December. This showed how big data can play a critical role in predicting and fighting infectious diseases. South Korea is also using ICT to fight the outbreak. Lee Kyung-eun tells us more.
Data analysis has been at the center of South Korea's battle against COVID-19. One prime example is ICT-based contact tracing. The Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention uses data provided by local telecommunications and credit card companies to trace those who may have come into contact with confirmed patients. The cooperation began following the 2015 MERS outbreak, which triggered an amendment to privacy laws and allowed the government to track personal information when national health is at risk. The government is also using data analysis to monitor potential patients. Since February 12th, all foreign entrants are required to report their condition using the newly launched app, Self-Health Check. They are required to check in once a day for 2 weeks, and those who fail to do so within 2 days upon arrival will receive a direct call from health authorities. The government said around 88% of entrants download the app. Experts say this smart monitoring system is critical in containing viruses in the early stages of an outbreak.
ICT-based contact tracing reduces time and mistakes compared to how it's done manually. This allows the government to quickly detect and isolate patients and minimize their exposure to others.
He said the system remains vital in the current transitional period when the outbreak is entering a new phase.
Now we're at the stage where the virus is gradually spreading into local communities. And in the beginning of that stage, it's still important that we find patients quickly and have them under control.
But he added if the virus spreads further, resources will need to be redistributed to minimize the damage and to focus more on the high-risk patients. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
Taking the podium at the Nat'l Assembly today was the floor leader of a newly formed joint negotiating bloc representing the legislature's smaller parties. Its floor leader is Yoo Sung-yup, and he heads what's now Parliament's third biggest negotiating bloc, formed on Monday with 21 members, a mix of liberals and centrists. Its name unofficially translated as the Union of Lawmakers for Democratic Unity. His speech focused on the economy, expressing concerns about the economic impact of the coronavirus outbreak. He stressed the necessity of a supplementary budget to soften the blow. He also touched upon the need for measures to reform the job market and overcome the country's low birth rate. And he asked for public support in bringing about political reform. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Se-won, Professor of Economics at Ewha Women's University. Professor Kim, thank you for making time today.
Good afternoon, Devin.
The stocks in New York were up Wednesday on expectations for stimulus measures in China. What exactly is the story there?
U.S. stock market slightly increased yesterday under ongoing coronavirus spread. This upward market movement is related to expectations on Chinese government's very aggressive support on Chinese economy. And also solid sales of U.S. houses were another positive factor on U.S. stock market yesterday. Along with U.S. market, European markets and Chinese market increased slightly also over yesterday and today.
Well, here in Korea, though, the Kospi and the Kosdaq started out higher, but by midday they were sharply lower. What happened today in the Korean market?
Both of Kospi and Kosdaq decreased by 67 basis points and 46 basis points, respectively, today. 31 new cases of coronavirus infections were reported yesterday. And the aggravating coronavirus situation in Korea is related to today's stock market decrease. In today's market, domestic institutional investors like insurance companies and fund managing companies were large sellers, but instead, individual domestic investors bought the domestic stocks.
Well, now the global credit ratings agency S&P has drastically lowered its growth forecast for the Korean economy this year. Last year, Korea just managed to make 2%. That was a struggle. But now S&P is calling for 1.6% this year. The coronavirus a factor there, of course. Why did they lower the growth forecast, and what's your own view?
As you said, of course, S&P's a lower economic growth forecast for Korean economy is related to coronavirus outbreak. Actually, previously, Moody's, which is another major rating company, also downgraded Korean economic growth to 1.9% from previous 2.1%. So broadly speaking, it should be pointed out that coronavirus outbreak will decrease Korea's domestic consumption and production of the nation through a weakened global value chain, particularly related to China.
Well, speaking of that risk, the IMF has identified the coronavirus as one of the main risks to the global economy. It's recommending that Korea, for one, go ahead with an expansionary fiscal policy, as it's been doing. But what kind of monetary tools does Korea still have at its disposal?
I'm pretty sure that Korean government will implement expansionary fiscal policy right after the end of coronavirus spread. But it should be pointed out that expansionary fiscal policy does not have any significant stimulation on domestic economy if it is not supported by central bank's monetary policy or decreasing interest rate. Since, as of now, Bank of Korea's base rate is 1.25% per year, we still have small room to decrease interest rate up to 0.5%.
Well, on that subject, Dr. Kim, finally, what do you think are the chances of an interest rate cut next month, and what would be the factors that the central bankers would take into account there?
Actually, until recently, Bank of Korea has strongly maintained the position of leaving the base interest rate at 1.25% level. But after having serious and unexpected external shock from coronavirus outbreak, the possibility of interest cut became very high. I'm not going to say they are going to cut the rate in the next month, but I would say they will be cutting interest rate by 25 basis points in the first half of this year.
All right, Professor Kim, we'll be watching for that in the months to come. Thanks so much for coming on today. We appreciate your insights, as always.
Thank you very much.
South Korea's producer prices in January rose for the second month in a row, led by an uptick in agricultural and fishery product prices. The Bank of Korea says the production price index came to 103.93 last month, up 0.2% from the month before. Agricultural and fishery product prices rose 3.4% on month, and electricity, gas, and water prices edged up 0.4%. Services increased by 0.3% on month, but prices of industrial goods edged down 0.1%. Compared to a year earlier, the producer price index in January was up 1%. The European Union has unveiled its new AI and data strategy aimed at achieving more transparency and gaining a competitive edge on American and Chinese IT giants. It's a comprehensive strategy that includes creating a single market for data, rules on AI, and plans for facial recognition. The EU emphasizes the need for privacy and transparency to ensure a secure digital environment. The bloc wants to have clear rules on the use of AI, all while helping European companies catch up with IT giants in the US and China. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.